My shameless sister got engaged to my ex-boyfriend while my whole family celebrated her without knowing the truth, but when I discovered she stole him behind my back while I was away on assignment, I showed up at the rehearsal dinner and said something that shattered her perfect life. Natalie, 32, a journalist living in Portland, Oregon, where the rain and coffee shops are as much a part of my life as my deadlines. My days are spent chasing stories, piecing together interviews, and trying to make sense of the world for readers. It's not glamorous, but it's mine, and I've always been the one who keeps things together. My work, my relationships, my family. At least, that's what I thought, until everything unraveled a few months ago, when my younger sister, Stella, dropped a bomb that's still echoing in my head. Stella's 28, a flight attendant who's always been the golden child of our family. She's got this effortless charm, big hazel eyes, a laugh that makes strangers smile, and an Instagram feed full of sunsets from exotic layovers. Growing up, I was the serious one, the older sister who studied hard and planned ahead, while Stella was the free spirit, always landing on her feet no matter how reckless she got. Never minded, I loved her, even when she'd borrow my clothes, or charm her way out of trouble with mom and dad. But this was different. It started with a phone call from Mom, Madeline, who's 60 and still runs her house in Seattle like it's a community center for our extended family. "Natalie, honey, Stella's engaged," she said, her voice practically sparkling. "You need to come up for the wedding planning. It's going to be beautiful." I was in the middle of editing a piece on local housing policy, my laptop balanced on my knees in a noisy coffee shop. I froze, my fingers hovering over the keyboard. "Engaged to who?" I asked, though some part of me already knew. "Ethan," she said, like it was the most natural thing in the world. Ethan, my Ethan. My ex-boyfriend of 5 years, the guy I thought I'd marry until he sent me a breakup text 2 years ago, citing different paths and needing space. I'd spent months piecing myself back together after that, wondering what I'd done wrong, while Stella was apparently cozying up to him. Mom didn't know any of this. Nobody did, except me and the ache in my chest. I mumbled something about work and hung up, my hands shaking. I opened Instagram and there it was. Stella's post, her hand flashing a diamond ring, Ethan's arm around her waist, both of them grinning under a cherry blossom tree. The caption read, "Said yes to forever with my best friend." Wedding bells, my stomach churned. The comments were a flood of heart emojis and congratulations from cousins, aunts, and family friends. Mom commented, "My baby girl, so happy for you both." Dad, who rarely posts, left a simple "proud of you." I scrolled until my eyes blurred, waiting for someone to notice I wasn't there, that I hadn't liked or commented. Nobody did. That night I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling of my one-bedroom apartment, the Portland rain tapping against the window. I kept replaying the last 5 years with Ethan. We'd met at a friend's barbecue, bonded over our love for hiking and bad sci-fi movies. He was a logistics coordinator, steady and kind, or so I thought. We'd talked about moving in together, maybe getting a dog. Then, out of nowhere, he was gone, leaving me with a curt text and no explanation. I'd heard through mutual friends that he'd started hanging out with Stella not long after, but I brushed it off as her being friendly. She was my sister, after all. Sisters don't do that. Or so I thought. The next day, Mom called again, this time about the wedding guest list. "You're coming, right, Nat? It wouldn't be the same without you." Her voice was warm, oblivious to the knife she was twisting. I wanted to scream, to tell her how Stella had been at those coffee dates with Ethan while I was still crying over him. But I didn't. I just said, "I'll think about it," and she sighed. "You're always so busy with work," she said. "Family comes first, you know." Family. That word used to mean everything to me. Growing up, it was me, Stella, Mom, and Dad in our cozy Seattle suburb, with barbecues and board game nights. Even when I moved to Portland for my career, I'd drive up for holidays, hauling my laundry basket and a bottle of wine to share. Now the idea of sitting through Stella's wedding, watching her walk down the aisle with Ethan, made me feel like I was drowning. I couldn't do it. I wouldn't. But the pressure kept coming. My cousin Bella, a barista who's always been more like a sister, texted me, "You okay? Mom says you're acting weird about the wedding." I didn't know how to explain without sounding petty or unhinged. How do you tell your family that your sister stole your boyfriend, and they're all cheering for her? I typed and deleted a dozen replies before settling on, "Just swamped with work. I'll figure it out." Days turned into weeks, and the wedding talk consumed our family group chat. Stella posted updates about dress fittings and venue tours, each one a fresh jab. Mom kept calling, her tone sharper each time. "Natalie, you can't miss your sister's wedding. What will people think?" Dad, who's 62 and prefers fixing cars to dealing with emotions, left me a voicemail. I wanted to yell that families don't betray each other, but I didn't. I just turned off my phone and buried myself in work, trying to ignore the growing pit in my stomach. I'm not sure when I decided I wasn't going. Maybe it was when I saw Stella's bridal shower photos, her laughing with Mom and our aunts, Ethan's mom beaming beside her. Or maybe it was when I realized nobody had asked me how I felt. Not once, not yet. Maybe not ever. I couldn't shake the image of that Instagram post. Her hand, his arm, the ring glinting like it was mocking me. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw them together, laughing, while I was left picking up the pieces of a life I thought I'd have. Work became my escape, but even that wasn't enough. My editor noticed I was distracted, missing deadlines, and gently suggested I take a break. A break? I didn't need a break. I needed answers. I needed to understand how my own sister could do this to me. One evening I ended up at a dive bar downtown, the kind with sticky floors and neon signs buzzing in the background. I wasn't there to drink myself into oblivion, just to get out of my apartment, away from the family group chat blowing up with wedding plans. That's when I ran into Leah, an old college friend of Ethan's who I hadn't seen in years. She was nursing a beer, her laptop open, probably working on some research project. We got to talking, and I don't know what made me spill, maybe the whiskey, maybe the weight of it all, but I told her everything. The breakup, the engagement, the way my family acted like I was overreacting. Leah leaned back, her eyes narrowing like she was piecing together a puzzle. "You didn't know?" she asked, and my stomach dropped. "Know what?" She hesitated, then told me the truth I'd been too blind to see. Stella hadn't just ended up with Ethan. It was calculated. While I was in Chicago for a 3-month assignment, chasing a big story on urban development, Stella was meeting Ethan for coffee, then dinners, then who knows. Leah had seen texts on Ethan's phone, ones where Stella painted me as distant, too focused on my career, not there for him. She knew exactly what she was doing, Leah said, her voice low. She wanted him, and she made it happen. I felt like the air had been sucked out of the room. I'd always known Stella was charming, the kind of person who could talk her way into or out of anything. But this was betrayal on a level I couldn't wrap my head around. I remembered those months in Chicago, calling Ethan late at night, feeling guilty for being away, promising we'd make it work. Meanwhile, my sister was spinning lies, cozying up to him, playing the fun, carefree alternative to my boring workaholic life. I wanted to scream, to call her right then and demand answers, but Leah put a hand on my arm. "Don't do anything rash," she said. "You need to be sure what you want out of this." That night, I barely slept. I kept replaying every moment from the past few years, looking for signs I'd missed. There were so many. Stella asking about Ethan's favorite coffee shop, saying she was just curious. Her showing up at our family dinners with stories about her latest layover, always steering the conversation away from my life. The way Ethan started pulling back, canceling plans, saying he was busy when I was home. I'd blamed myself, thought I wasn't enough. Now I knew it wasn't just me, it was her, orchestrating it all. The next day I dug deeper. I scrolled through Stella's Instagram, not just the curated posts, but the stories she'd saved in her highlights. There they were, photos of her and Ethan at a concert, a farmer's market, a hike we used to do together. The timestamps showed some were from when Ethan and I were still dating. My hands shook as I screenshot everything, saving evidence like I was building a case. I didn't know what I'd do with it, but I needed proof, something to hold on to when I started doubting myself. I called Leah again and we met at a park, sitting on a bench with takeout coffee. She brought her laptop, showed me more screenshots she'd saved from a group chat where Stella bragged about winning Ethan. It was like reading a stranger's words, not my sister's. She'd joked about how easy it was to get him to open up, how she just had to be there when I wasn't. I felt sick, but I couldn't stop. Leah told me she'd confronted Ethan once, back when it started, but he brushed it off, said Stella was just a friend. Friend. Right. The worst part, my family didn't see it. Mom was too busy planning the perfect wedding, gushing about how Stella deserved this happiness. Dad just nodded along, avoiding conflict, like always. I tried bringing it up with my cousin Bella over coffee, hoping she'd get it. Stella's always been a little selfish, I said, keeping my voice steady. But this? She went after Ethan while we were together. Bella frowned, stirring her latte. Are you sure? Maybe it just happened after you guys broke up. Her doubt stung, like I was the one making it up. I showed her the screenshots, but she just shrugged. You know how Stella is. She's not malicious. Maybe she didn't mean it like that. Not malicious? I wanted to laugh. Stella knew exactly what she was doing. She'd seen me cry over Ethan, heard me talk about our plans, and still chose to take him. And now she was getting her fairy tale wedding with our whole family cheering her on, while I was left feeling like an outsider in my own life. I stopped responding to the group chat, ignored Mom's calls, let Dad's voicemails pile like another brick in the wall between me and them. By the end of the week, I was a mess, angry, hurt, and so damn tired. I wanted to confront Stella, to make her admit what she'd done, but something held me back. Maybe it was fear of what would happen if I did, of losing what little family connection I had left. Or maybe it was the part of me that still loved her, despite everything. All I knew was that the truth was out now, and there was no going back. I just didn't know what came next. I couldn't keep it bottled up anymore. The screenshots, the late-night talks with Leah, the way my family's wedding fever ignored my pain, it was eating me alive. I'd spent weeks dodging calls and muting the group chat, but the pressure kept building, like a dam about to burst. When Mom invited me to a family barbecue at her house, I almost said no, but something in me snapped. I needed to say my piece, even if it meant torching everything. So I drove up, my heart pounding, those screenshots burning a hole in my phone. The backyard was packed. Cousins flipping burgers, aunts gossiping over wine coolers, kids running around with sparklers. It was the kind of chaotic, warm family gathering we'd always had, but it felt like a stage play I wasn't part of. Stella was holding court by the picnic table, her laugh cutting through the chatter as she showed off her engagement ring to our cousins. Ethan was there too, flipping a burglar, looking every bit the perfect fiancé. I stood by the cooler, gripping a soda, trying to breathe through the rage bubbling in my chest. Mom spotted me and waved me over, her smile tight. You made it. Come sit, we're talking centerpieces. I nodded, but my eyes were on Stella, who barely glanced at me like I was just another guest. That's when I knew I couldn't play along. Dinner was served, grilled chicken, potato salad, the usual spread, and everyone settled around the long table under string lights. The conversation turned to wedding plans, the venue. I felt like I was choking on every bite. Finally, I couldn't take it. I set down my fork, the clink louder than I meant, and stood up. I need to say something, I said, my voice shaking but loud enough to hush the table. All eyes turned to me. Mom's curious, Dad's wary, Stella's guarded. I didn't plan it, but the words spilled out like they'd been waiting for years. Stella, you went after Ethan while we were still together. You lied about me, told him I didn't care, that I was too busy for him. I have proofs, texts, screenshots, everything. You betrayed me, and you're all acting like it's fine. The table went dead silent. A cousin's kid dropped a plastic cup and it rolled across the grass. Stella's face flushed, her eyes wide, but she recovered fast. That's not true, she said, her voice high and shaky. You're twisting things. Ethan and I got together after you broke up. You're just jealous because I'm happy. Her words were like a slap, and I laughed, bitter and loud. Jealous? You saw him, Stella. You saw. I pulled out my phone, ready to show the screenshots, but Mom cut in. Natalie, enough, she said, her tone sharp, the one she used when we were kids fighting over toys. This is not the time or place. You're ruining a happy moment. I stared at her, my chest tight. A happy moment? For who, Mom? Not for me. You don't even care what she did. Dad just looked at his plate, picking at his food, silent as always. Our aunts exchanged awkward glances, and Bella whispered something to her sister, avoiding my eyes. Bella started crying, big dramatic tears, and Ethan put his arm around her, glaring at me like I was the villain. You're making this about you, he said, his voice low. Let her have this. I wanted to scream that it was about me, that they'd both ripped my life apart, but the words stuck in my throat. Instead, I grabbed my bag and walked out, the sound of Stella's sobs and Mom's "Natalie, come back" following me to the car. I drove home in a haze, the Portland skyline blurring through tears I didn't realize I was shedding. My phone buzzed nonstop, texts from cousins saying I'd gone too far, a voicemail from Mom scolding me for embarrassing Stella. Bella sent a message, I get you're hurt, but was that necessary? Even Leah, when I called her later, sounded cautious. You got it out, but what now? All I knew was that I'd lit a match, and the fire was spreading. The next few days were a blur. Mom called, her voice a mix of anger and worry. You can't keep holding grudges, Natalie. She's your sister. You need to be at the wedding. I hung up, my hands shaking. Dad left another voicemail, short and gruff. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. Stella didn't reach out at all, which hurt more than I expected. The group chat went quiet, like everyone was. I felt like I'd been erased from my own family. I kept replaying the barbecue, wondering if I'd been too harsh, too public. But then I'd look at those screenshots, read Stella's smug texts about winning Ethan, and the anger would flare up again. I wasn't wrong to call her out, but it didn't feel like a victory. It felt like I'd lost something. My place at the table, my family's trust. I'd always been the one to keep the peace, to smooth things over. Now I was the one breaking everything apart. By the end of the week, I was exhausted, sleeping badly, snapping at coworkers. Leah texted, offering to meet up, but I didn't want to talk. I just wanted to disappear. The wedding was getting closer, and every mention of it on social media, in voicemails, felt like a fresh wound. I didn't know if I could face them again, not after this. But I also couldn't let Stella's lies win. I needed to do something, anything, to take back some control. I just didn't know what that looked like yet. After the barbecue, I felt like I'd been kicked out of my own life. The silence from my family was deafening. Nobody reached out to check on me, not even Bella, who usually played peacemaker. My phone was a graveyard of unanswered texts and voicemails, all variations of, "You went too far," or "Just let it go." I couldn't. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Stella's fake tears, Ethan's glare, Mom's disappointed frown. It wasn't the villain here, but they'd made me feel like one. I was done being the doormat, done letting her skate by with her perfect life built on my pain. I called Leah, who'd become my only ally in this mess. We met at a coffee shop, the kind with mismatched mugs and too loud indie music. Over lattes, I spilled everything, the barbecue, the fallout, the way my family closed ranks around Stella. Leah listened, her brow furrowed, then leaned forward. "You want to know what else she's been hiding?" she asked. My heart skipped. "There's more?" Leah nodded, pulling out her lap. She'd done some digging, not because she's nosy, but because she hated seeing me hurt. What she found was worse than I expected. Leah's glamorous flight attendant life? Half of it was a lie. Leah showed me posts from airline forums where coworkers hinted she'd been exaggerating her routes, claiming international trips when she was stuck on domestic shuttles. Her Instagram stories, full of exotic beaches and city skylines, were often stock photos or recycled from old vacations. She'd even lied about her finances. Leah found a public record of a car loan default she'd dodged by sweet-talking our parents into bailing her out. I stared at the screen, my coffee going cold. It wasn't just Ethan. Stella's whole life was a performance. and I'd been too busy hurting to see it. The anger came back, sharper this time. I wanted her to feel what I felt, exposed, raw, betrayed. I started planning, my mind racing with ideas. The wedding rehearsal dinner was coming up, the perfect stage. I'd show up uninvited and lay it all out, her lies about Ethan, her fake job, her money troubles. I'd do it in front of Ethan's family, her friends, everyone who thought she was perfect. I spent nights scripting my speech, imagining her face as I dropped each truth bomb. Leah helped, pulling more evidence, screenshots of Stella's shady posts, even a text from an old coworker calling her out for faking a promotion. But as the days passed, the plan started to feel heavy. Leah noticed it when we met again, this time at her apartment surrounded by takeout containers. "You sure about this?" she asked, her voice gentle but firm. "You're not her, you know. You don't have to play dirty to win." I bristled, but deep down I knew she was right. I wasn't sleeping, barely eating, my work slipping again. My editor had pulled me aside, asking if I was okay. I wasn't. I was obsessed, consumed by the idea of making Stella pay. But what would I get out of it? A ruined rehearsal? A family that hated me more? I went back to those screenshots, not the ones about her job or money, but the ones about Ethan. The way she'd bragged about winning him, like he was a prize and I was nothing. It still stung, but I started to see it differently. Stella wasn't some mastermind. She was desperate, insecure, chasing a version of herself she couldn't live up to. It didn't excuse what she did, but it made me wonder if my revenge would just keep us both trapped in this cycle of hurt. The night before the rehearsal, I sat on my couch, a glass of wine in hand, staring at my phone. I drafted an email to Mom, laying out everything, not to hurt Stella, but to make them understand. I didn't send it. Instead, I called Leah, my voice shaky. "What if I just let it go?" I asked. She didn't answer right away, just let me talk, spilling out my fear of losing my family forever, my anger at being invisible, my guilt for wanting to hurt Stella back. "You don't have to decide now," Leah said finally. "But whatever you do, make sure it's for you, not her." I went to bed, my plan still half-formed. The rehearsal was tomorrow, and I'd RSVP'd no, but part of me wanted to go, not to destroy her, but to face her. I imagined walking in calm, saying my piece without malice, not to ruin her night, but to reclaim mine. I wanted her to know I saw her, all of her, and that I wasn't going to let her lies define me anymore. But could I do it without losing myself? I wasn't sure. The morning of the rehearsal, I woke up with a knot in my stomach. I packed a bag, just in case I decided to drive up. I kept picturing the dinner, fancy table settings, Ethan's parents toasting, Stella in the spotlight. I could walk in and burn it all down, or I could say something real, something that might actually matter. Or maybe I'd stay home, let them have their night, and figure out how to live with the pieces. All I knew was that I was tired of carrying this anger, tired of letting it eat me alive. Whatever I did next, it had to be for me. I drove up to the rehearsal dinner with my heart in my throat, my speech scribbled on a napkin in my purse. I'd spent the morning pacing, debating whether to go, whether to burn everything down or just walk away. The screenshots were still on my phone, a digital weight I couldn't shake, but Leah's words echoed in my head. "Do this for you, not her." By the time I pulled into the venue, a fancy restaurant with fairy lights and a private room, I wasn't sure what I'd say. Only that I needed to be there, to face it, whatever it was. Inside, the room was buzzing. Tables were draped in white linens, candles flickering, everyone dressed up and smiling. Stella was in a cream dress, radiant as always, laughing with Ethan's mom. Mom was fussing over a centerpiece, Dad nursing a beer in the corner. I stood in the doorway, invisible for a moment, my stomach churning. Then Bella spotted me, her eyes widening, and the room seemed to pause. Stella turned, her smile faltering, and I felt every pair of eyes on me, waiting for another scene like the barbecue. I'd planned to stand up during the toasts, to lay out her lies, Ethan, the fake job, the loans. I'd imagined the gasps, the awkward silence, her perfect night crumbling. But as I took my seat, handed a glass of wine by a nervous cousin, I felt the anger shift. It wasn't gone, but it was quieter, like a fire burning low. When the toast started, Ethan's dad going on about love and family, I stood up, my napkin crumpled in my fist. The room went still again, and Stella's eyes locked on mine, braced for a fight. It wasn't going to come, I started, my voice steadier than I expected. Not because I don't love my family, but because I've been hurting. Stella, you hurt me. You went after Ethan when we were together, and I know about the lies you told to make it happen. I saw her flinch, Ethan's hand tightening on hers, but I kept going. I've been angry for months, planning ways to make you feel what I felt. But I'm not here to ruin your night. I'm here because family means something to me, even when it's messy. I'm not okay with what you did, but I'm choosing to let it go, for me, not for you. The room was silent, forks frozen mid-bite. Mom's eyes were wet, Dad's head bowed, Stella's face crumpled, and for once it wasn't an act. "I'm sorry," she whispered, barely audible, tears spilling over. "I was jealous. You always had it together, and I messed up." It wasn't the full confession I'd wanted, but it was something. Raw, real, maybe the first honest thing she'd said to me in years. Ethan looked away, his jaw tight, and I wondered what he was thinking, but it didn't matter anymore. This wasn't about him. Mom stood, her chair scraping, and for a second I thought she'd scold me again. Instead, she hugged me hard, whispering, "I didn't know how much you were hurting." It wasn't forgiveness, not entirely, but it was a start. The rest of the dinner was awkward, quiet conversations, stolen glances. But I stayed. I didn't want to run anymore. Afterwards, Stella caught me by the door. "Can we talk? After the wedding?" she asked, her voice small. I nodded, not trusting myself to say more. I drove home, the night blurring past, feeling lighter than I had in months. Back in my apartment, I pulled out my journal, something I hadn't touched since this all started. I wrote about the dinner, about letting go, about how I'd spent so long trying to prove I was right, that I'd forgotten how to be okay. The wedding came and went. I didn't go, not out of spite, but because I needed space, and for once Mom and Dad didn't push. Stella sent a text a week later asking to meet for coffee. We did at a quiet cafe, just the two of us. She admitted more, how she'd always felt like she was in my shadow, how she'd wanted what I had, even if it meant hurting me. I didn't forgive her. Not fully. But I listened. We agreed to keep talking, maybe see a therapist together someday. It wasn't a movie ending, no big hugs or tearful promises, but it was enough for now. Looking back, I realized I'd been carrying her betrayal like a weight, letting it define me. I thought revenge would fix it, make me whole again, but standing up at that dinner, saying my truth without malice, did more than any speech could have. I'm still figuring out what family means when trust is broken, but I'm learning to put myself first, not in a selfish way, but in a way that lets me heal. I've started hiking again, something I used to love with Ethan but abandoned after the breakup. Last weekend I went alone, just me and the trail, the air crisp and the trees stretching endlessly above. I didn't think about Stella or the wedding or what anyone thought of me. I just walked, one step at a time, feeling the ground solid beneath me. It's not perfect, and neither am I, but I'm okay with that. For the first time in a long time, I'm okay. If this hit close to home, hit subscribe, drop a comment, and let's talk. I'm here, and I listen.